I sent my cheating wife a divorce letter right in front of her lover at dinner. What would you do if you caught your partner betraying you in the most painful way possible? Could you keep your composure as you confronted them? This is the story of Liam, a man who turned heartbreak into strength and found himself in the process. Liam was an architect, meticulous, hardworking, and devoted to his family. His wife, Emma, was a spirited art teacher who once lit up every room she walked into. Their life together seemed picturesque, a cozy home, 2 kids, and a future built on promises of love and partnership. But cracks began to show. Emma's laughter grew quieter, and Liam's long hours at the office became the soundtrack of their life. One day a friend mentioned seeing Emma at a Manhattan restaurant, except she wasn't alone. She was with a man named Lucas, sharing what looked like an intimate dinner. Liam brushed it off, convincing himself it was a misunderstanding. But deep down, a knot of unease tightened in his chest. That night, as Emma returned home late, her excuses felt hollow. Something was wrong. Curiosity gnawed at Liam until he could no longer ignore it. With trembling hands, he scrolled through her phone when she left it unattended on the counter. There it was, messages filled with flirtation and secrets between Emma and Lucas. His heart sank as the reality hit. The woman he had loved for years was betraying him. But this isn't a story about a man who let betrayal break him. No, it's about what he did next, something that would shock not just Emma, but Lucas too. Instead of confronting her immediately, Liam waited, observed, and planned. For weeks he bottled up his emotions, silently watching Emma's behavior. Every smile she gave him felt tainted, every word weighed down by her lie. Then the opportunity presented itself. Emma announced she'd be out with friends one evening. Knowing the truth, Liam followed her. His heart pounded as she stepped into an upscale restaurant in New York. Arm in arm with Lucas, he felt a mix of anger and heartbreak, but also steely resolve. It was time to act. Liam didn't choose violence or chaos. He chose clarity and finality. With the divorce letter in hand, he walked into the restaurant and approached their table. Emma's eyes widened as he placed the letter in front of her. "Enjoy your dinner," he said, calm but loaded with meaning. Her world shattered in that instant. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about what happens when we face the hardest moments of our lives head on. Let's dive into Liam and Emma's journey. One that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and resilience. Every great story begins with a love that feels unbreakable. Liam and Emma's story was no different. They met in their mid-20s, both full of dreams and passion. Liam, a young architect, had just started working for a prestigious firm. Emma, an art teacher, was vibrant and full of life. They were drawn to each other like magnets, their connection immediate and powerful. They fell in love quickly, as if the universe had planned it. Their dates were filled with laughter, deep conversation, and a sense of comfort neither had ever experienced before. Emma loved how Liam made her feel safe, and Liam adored Emma's creative energy. They balanced each other perfectly, at least in the beginning. When they got married, their friends and family couldn't stop talking about how perfect they were for each other. They bought a modest house in the suburb, painted every room together, and spent their weekends planning their future. Soon they welcomed 2 children into their lives, a boy and a girl, completing what seemed to be the perfect picture of happiness. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bond. Liam was ambitious. His career in architecture demanded long hours and late nights. He wanted to give his family the life they deserved, but in doing so, he slowly began to disappear from it. Emma, on the other hand, thrived in the chaos of family life. She loved her kids deeply, but over time she started feeling like something was missing. "Do you even see me anymore?" Emma had asked Liam one night, as they sat at the dinner table, the kids already asleep. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. "I'm doing this for us," Liam had replied, not looking up from his lap. "For our future." It wasn't a fight, but it was the first crack in their marriage. The years went by, and the cracks deepened. Liam's work hours stretched longer, and Emma's vibrant spirit began to dull. She stopped painting and stopped sharing stories about her students. She felt invisible, like a shadow of the woman she once was. Liam, too, was struggling in his own way. He saw Emma pulling away but didn't know how to fix it. He thought working harder, earning more, and providing stability would solve everything. But relationships aren't built on paycheck. They're built on time, love, and attention. And slowly those things started to fade. It wasn't all bad. There were still moments of joy, family vacations, birthday parties, lazy Sunday morning. But those moments started feeling forced, like they were trying too hard to hold on to something slipping away. Emma didn't plan to betray Liam. In her mind, she was just trying to fill the void. When Lucas came into her life, it wasn't love at first sight, it was attention. He noticed her in a way Liam hadn't for years. He complimented her, listened to her, and made her feel alive again. At first she thought it was harmless. Just a little excitement, a spark to remind her of who she used to be. But sparks can quickly turn into fire. As Emma grew closer to Lucas, she became more distant from Liam. She started staying late at school, making excuses to avoid family dinner. Liam noted, but he chalked it up to stress. "She's just tired," he told himself. "We all are." The truth was, Emma felt trapped. She loved her family, but she couldn't shake the feeling that life had passed her by. Lucas offered an escape, a fantasy where she wasn't just a wife or a mom, she was Emma again. Liam, on the other hand, was oblivious to the storm brewing right under his nose. He still believed they could fix. He thought if he worked just a little harder, things would go back to how they used to be. But love doesn't work that way. You can't fix something you don't see is broken. And then came the day when Liam's friend mentioned seeing Emma at a restaurant with another man. It was like a punch to the gut. Liam didn't want to believe it. There's no way, he told himself. Not Emma. But doubt has a way of creeping in, no matter how much you try to push it away. That night, As Emma sat across from him at the dinner table, Liam found himself watching her in a way he hadn't in years. He noticed the way she avoided his eye, the way she seemed lost in her thought. For the first time, Liam wondered if the woman he loved was keeping secrets from him. The discovery of betrayal. Liam couldn't shake the feeling. After that brief conversation with his friend, something inside him shifted. Doubt started creeping into every thought. He wanted to believe Emma was the woman he had married, the one who would never betray him, but the pieces weren't adding up. The long hours she spent at work, her sudden interest in dressing up more than usual, and the distance between them, it all pointed to something he wasn't ready to face. One night, as Emma busied herself in the kitchen, Liam stared at her phone on the counter. His heart raced as the idea crossed his mind. He had never invaded her privacy before. They had always trusted each other. But this time, trust wasn't enough. His hands felt shaky as he reached for the phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. The phone was locked. It was a small relief enough for him to back off, but the fact that her phone now had a password he didn't know stirred even more questions in his mind. Why would she lock it? What was she hiding? Liam decided he needed to know for sure. He started paying closer attention to her actions. Every time she said she was going out with friends, he found himself wondering, is that the truth? Or is there something else? The turning point came one Saturday morning. Emma had left her laptop open on the dining table while she went upstairs to get ready. Liam, passing by, noticed an email notification pop up. It was from someone named Luca. The subject line simply read, "Can't wait to see you again." His stomach dropped. He didn't click on it, not yet. Instead, he sat down and stared at the screen, his mind racing. This was it. Proof. But a part of him didn't want to know. He wanted to close the laptop and pretend he hadn't seen anything. After all, if he didn't confirm it, there was still a chance he was wrong, right? But curiosity and pain won out. He opened the email. What he read changed everything. The message was short but intimate, the kind of note someone sends when they're in love, or at least pretending to be. Phrases like "last night was amazing," and "I miss you" already leaped off the screen. Liam felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. His world spun as the reality of Emma's betrayal came crashing down on him. At first, he didn't know what to do. Should he confront her immediately, demand answers, or wait, gather more information, and confront her when he is ready? The anger and heartbreak swirled inside him. But beneath it all was one question: why? Why would she do this to him? To their family? The days that followed were some of the hardest Liam had ever endured. Every time he looked at Emma, he saw the messages in his mind. Every smile she gave him felt like a lie. But instead of exploding, Liam decided to dig deeper. One evening, while Emma was out, Liam found her phone left unlocked. His hands trembled as he scrolled through her message. There they were, texts with Luca, filled with flirtation and plans to meet. The words stung like knives. "I can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel so alive." Every sentence felt like another betrayal. But what hurt the most were the ones where Emma talked about Liam. She had written things like, "He doesn't notice me, and I feel like I'm just existing in his world." It was like hearing her thoughts directly, and it broke. He hadn't realized how much she had been hurting, but even so, it didn't excuse what she was doing. Instead of confronting her that night, Liam made a decision. He wasn't going to yell or argue. He wasn't going to give her the chance to spin the truth. No, he would wait until the perfect moment, when she least expected it, and confront her in a way that left no room for denial. He started keeping track of her excuses and her outing, noting every time she said she was working late or meeting a friend. The patterns were clear. It was always the same nights, the same vague explanation. She didn't know he was watching, but he was. The final straw came a few weeks later when Liam overheard Emma on a phone call in their bedroom. She thought he was downstairs, but he had come up quietly, hoping to grab a book. Her voice was soft and playful, the way she used to sound when she talked to him. "I'll see you at the restaurant," she said, her tone full of excitement. "I can't wait." Liam stood frozen outside the door. She wasn't talking to him, and she certainly wasn't talking to a friend. She was talking to Luca, the man who had stepped into his marriage like it was his. That night, Liam didn't say a word to Emma. Instead, he planned his next move. If she was going to meet Lucas at a restaurant, he would be there too, but not as a passive observer. No, this time he was going to make sure Emma and Lucas understood the consequences of their action. As Liam sat in his car that night, watching Emma walk into the upscale restaurant, he felt a mix of emotions: heartbreak, anger, and strangely enough, clarity. He knew what he had to do. He grabbed the divorce papers he had prepared earlier and stepped out of the car. The build-up to the confrontation. Liam's mind raced as he sat in his car outside the restaurant. Through the large windows, he could see Emma and Lucas seated at a cozy corner table. Emma laughed at something Lucas said, her face glowing in a way Liam hadn't seen in years. It was as if she were a completely different person, a stranger. The sight of her so happy, so at ease, stung deeper than Liam had expected. But this wasn't the time to get emotional. He had a plan. And tonight was the night to execute. For weeks, Liam had been mentally preparing for this moment. Every smile she had faked at home, every lie she had told about working late, and every flirty message she had sent to Lucas, all of it led to this. But now, as he gripped the divorce papers in his hand, doubt began to creep in. What if she denies everything he thought? What if this doesn't give me the closure I'm looking for? Liam took a deep breath. No, he couldn't let doubt stop. He had been through too much to turn back now. Inside the restaurant, Emma leaned in closer to Luca. Liam clenched his jaw as he watched. His heart felt heavy, but he forced himself to stay calm. This wasn't just about exposing Emma. It was about reclaiming control of his life, something he had lost long before her betrayal began. As Liam stepped out of the car and walked toward the restaurant, his pulse quickened. The cool night air did little to calm him. He rehearsed his lines in his head, making sure he wouldn't stumble over his words. This wasn't about causing a scene or embarrassing Emma. It was about delivering the truth calmly, firmly, and with finality. When he reached the entrance, he hesitated. The smell of garlic and fresh bread wafted through the air, a stark contrast to the tension brewing inside him. For a brief moment he thought about turning around, about letting it go and dealing with the situation in private. But then he remembered the message, he remembered her lie, and he remembered the nights he spent alone, wondering where she was. No, he had to do this. As Liam entered the restaurant, the atmosphere was warm and inviting. Soft jazz music played in the background, and couples chatted over candlelit tables. He scanned the room, his eyes locking on Emma and Lucas. They were deep in conversation, completely unaware of his presence. Liam walked past the hostess without a word. He was a man on a mission, and nothing was going to stop it. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of the moment pressing down on his grip on the divorce papers tightened. Finally, he reached their table. Emma looked up, her eyes widening in shock as she saw Liam standing there. "Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas froze, his confident demeanor faltering as he realized who Liam was. Liam didn't waste any time. He placed the divorce papers on the table in front of Emma. The sound of the pages hitting the wood seemed louder than it should have been, drawing the attention of a few nearby diners. "Enjoy your dinner," Liam said, his voice calm but icy. Emma's face turned pale as she glanced down at the paper. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Lucas, meanwhile, sat rigid in his chair, avoiding Liam's gaze. The silence at the table was deafening. "I thought you should know," Liam continued, turning his attention to Lucas. "She's all yours now. But just so you know, once she has nothing left to give, you'll leave her too. Isn't that right, Lucas?" Lucas's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence was all the confirmation Liam needed. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Liam, please," she started, but Liam raised a hand, cutting her off. "You don't get to explain," he said firmly. "I gave you years of my life, years of trust, love, and commitment, and this is how you repay me." Emma reached for his hand, but he stepped back. "I've known about this for weeks," he continued. "I've seen the messages, the lie, all of it. Do you even realize what you've done to our family? To our kids?" At the mention of their children, Emma broke down, her tears flowing freely. She tried to speak, but her sobs made it impossible. Liam looked at her one last time, his expression unreadable. "I hope he was worth it," he said quietly before turning and walking away. The restaurant was silent. Diners stared, their meals forgotten as they processed what had just happened. Emma sat frozen, the divorce papers still in front of her. Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly unsure of what to do. Outside, Liam exhaled deeply. For the first time in weeks, he felt a strange sense of relief. The confrontation was over, and while it hadn't been easy, he knew it was necessary. As he got into his car and drove away, he didn't look back. Inside the restaurant, Emma was left to face the fallout. And Lucas? He wouldn't be sticking around for much longer. Flashbacks of their marriage. As Liam drove away from the restaurant, his mind drifted back to the beginning of it all. How did things get so bad? When did the love they shared start to crumble? The answers weren't simple, but they were hidden in the moments he had overlooked for years. Liam remembered the first time he saw Emma. She was teaching a group of kids how to paint a mural at a local community event. Her laughter was infectious, her movements graceful. He had been drawn to her energy immediately. Back then, life was simple. He had walked up to her, introduced himself awkwardly, and offered to help with the painting. "Are you any good with a brush?" she had teased, smudging a streak of blue paint on his arm. That moment stuck with him. It was when he knew she was different, someone who could bring light into his structured, goal-driven world. Their relationship moved fast but felt natural. They went on endless dates, talked for hours about their dream, and shared their hopes for the future. Emma told him about her passion for art, and how it allowed her to express the emotions she couldn't put into words. Liam, on the other hand, spoke about architecture, and his dream of designing buildings that people would remember. They were perfect for each other, or so it seemed. Their differences complemented one another. Liam brought stability and focus, while Emma brought creativity and spontaneity. Together, they dreamed of a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibility. But the reality of life doesn't always align with dreams. After they got married, life started moving quickly. Liam worked hard to establish himself in his field, often taking on extra projects to ensure financial security. Emma, meanwhile, continued teaching and began to immerse herself in her own art. Their love was strong, but their priorities started shifting. The long conversations they used to have became short exchanges about schedules and errands. The spontaneous dates turned into routine dinner. The laughter faded into silence. Liam wasn't blind to the changes, but he thought they were normal and natural part of growing up and building a life together. "We're just busy," he told himself whenever he noticed Emma's distant expression. This is what happens when you're building a future. Emma, however, felt its weight different. She had always been someone who thrived on connection and emotion, but as Liam buried himself in work, she started to feel like she was living alone in their marriage. The man she had fallen in love with, the one who used to surprise her with flowers and listen to her talk about her dreams, seemed to have vanished. But the cracks in their relationship grew wider after the birth of their children. While both of them adored their kids, the demands of parenthood left little room for anything else. Liam's work became even more consuming as he took on bigger projects to provide for their growing family. Emma, on the other hand, felt trapped in a cycle of exhaustion. The spark that had once defined their relationship was now a faint ember. Emma tried to talk to Liam about how she felt. "I miss us," she had said one evening as they sat in the living room. The kids were asleep and the house was quiet, but Liam was glued to his laptop, finishing a proposal for a client. "I miss us too," he had replied, barely looking up. But this is for us, Emma. Everything I'm doing is for us. Emma didn't press the issue. She didn't want to seem ungrateful, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship had become one-sided. She wanted more not just for herself but for both of them. But as the years passed, she stopped trying. The words she once wanted to say were replaced with silence. The silence became their new normal. Liam didn't notice how far apart they had grown because he was too busy chasing his goal. He assumed Emma was content because she never complained. But Emma wasn't content, she was lonely. And loneliness can make people do things they never thought they were capable of. That's when Lucas came into the picture. Liam couldn't pinpoint when it had happened, but he knew now that Lucas had filled the emotional void Emma had been feeling for years. He hated Lucas, but a part of him also hated him. If he had paid more attention, would things have turned out differently? If he had listened when Emma said she missed them, could he have stopped all of this before it started? These questions haunted Liam as he drove home from the restaurant. The memories of their early days together clashed with the reality of where they had ended up. He didn't want to think of their marriage as a failure, but the evidence was undeniable. Somewhere along the way, they had lost each other, and now it was too late to fix. As Liam pulled into his driveway, he realized something else. This wasn't just Emma's betrayal. It was the culmination of years of neglect, silence, and unspoken pain. They had both contributed to the unraveling of their marriage, but Emma had made the choice to break their vow. That was something he couldn't forgive. Inside the house, their children were fast asleep. Liam stood in the hallway, staring at the family photos on the wall. In one picture, he and Emma were smiling brightly, their arms wrapped around each other. It was taken on their honeymoon, a time when their love felt unshakable. Now, that picture felt like it belonged to a different life, a life that no longer existed. As Liam turned off the lights and went to bed, he made a promise to himself. He couldn't change the past, but he could make sure the future was different. For his kids, for himself, and for the life he wanted to rebuild. Now, the fallout, divorce, and family impact. The morning after the confrontation, the house was eerily quiet. Emma's side of the bed was empty, though her belongings were still scattered around the room. Liam had barely slept, his mind replaying the events at the restaurant over and over. The weight of what had happened settled heavily in his chest. This wasn't just the end of a fight, it was the end of their life together as he had known it. Liam spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions of daily life but feeling disconnected from everything around him. At work, he stared blankly at his computer screen, unable to focus. At home, he avoided Emma as much as possible, speaking only when necessary for the kid. But the silence was deafening, and the tension in the house was unbearable. It didn't take long for Emma to break the ice. One evening, after the kids were asleep, she approached Liam in the kitchen. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. "Liam," she began soft, her voice trembling, "we need to talk." Liam didn't look up from the mug of coffee he was clutching. "There's nothing to talk about, Emma," he said, his tone flat. Emma stepped closer, desperate to reach. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've destroyed everything, but You destroyed our family," Liam interrupted, his voice sharp. "Do you even understand what you've done? To me? To our kids?" Emma's tears started again, but Liam didn't stop. "You think this is just about you and Lucas? It's not. It's about the lie, the betrayal, the fact that you didn't think about anyone but yourself." Emma's sobs filled the kitchen, but Liam didn't feel sorry for her. Not this time. He had spent too many years putting her needs above his own, and now, he realized it was time to focus on what really mattered: his children and their future. The next day, Liam met with a lawyer. It wasn't an easy decision, but he knew it was the right one. The divorce papers were drawn up quickly, and Liam made it clear he wanted custody of the kid. He didn't trust Emma to put their needs first anymore, not after what she had done. When Emma received the papers, she broke down completely. She begged Liam to reconsider, to give her another chance, but Liam's mind was made up. "You made your choice, Emma," he said, his voice firm. "Now I'm making mine." The weeks that followed were some of the hardest Liam had ever endured. He moved out of the house and into a small apartment in Chicago, taking the kids with him. The move was chaotic, but Liam was determined to give his children a fresh start. He enrolled them in a new school, set up their bedrooms with all their favorite things, and tried his best to create a sense of normalcy. But it wasn't easy. The kids were confused and hurt, and they didn't understand why their mom wasn't with them. "Is Mommy coming to live with us soon?" his daughter asked one night, her big eyes filled with hope. Liam's heart broke as he knelt down to her level. "Mommy and I are going to live in different places now," he explained gently. "But we both love you very much, and that will never change." His son, who was older, wasn't as easily comforted. "Why did this happen, Dad?" he asked one night, his voice heavy with frustration. "Why did you and Mom have to ruin everything?" Liam struggled to find the right word. How could he explain something so complex to a child? "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," he said finally. "But what's important is that we learn from those mistakes and do our best to move forward." The kids weren't the only ones struggling. Liam found himself battling waves of anger and sadness as he adjusted to his new reality. Nights were the hardest. After the kids were asleep, silence of the apartment felt suffocating. He missed the noise of family life, even the arguments and chaos. But what he missed most was the version of Emma he had fallen in love with, the one who used to make him laugh, who used to dream with. Meanwhile, Emma was dealing with her own fallout. Left alone in the house they had once shared, she was forced to confront the reality of her actions. Lucas, as Liam had predicted, didn't stick around. He ghosted Emma not long after the confrontation, leaving her to pick up the pieces on her own. Emma tried reaching out to Liam several times, but he rarely responded. When he did, it was strictly about the kids. She wanted to explain, to make him understand that she hadn't set out to hurt him. But Liam wasn't interested in excuses. In his mind, There was nothing she could say that would change what she had done. Despite everything, Liam remained focused on his children. He started making an effort to be more present in their lives, something he hadn't done enough of before. He attended every school play, every soccer game, and every parent-teacher conference. He cooked their favorite meals, helped with homework, and made sure they knew they were loved. Slowly, Liam began to rebuild his life. He threw himself into his work, using it as a distraction from the pain. He reconnected with old friends who reminded him of the person he used to be before his marriage had consumed him. And most importantly, he started to believe that he could create a better future for himself and his kids. But even as Liam moved forward, the scars of the past remained. He couldn't forget the betrayal, the lie, or the way his family had been torn apart. And while he no longer hated Emma, he couldn't bring himself to forgive her either. Some wounds, he realized, take a lifetime to heal. Emma's betrayal by Luca. In the weeks following the confrontation, Emma found herself completely alone. The once bustling house now felt like a hollow shell. The silence was unbearable, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards or the hum of the refrigerator. It was as if the walls themselves were mourning the family that had once filled the space with life. Lucas hadn't called. Not once. At first, Emma convinced herself that he was just giving her space after the dramatic showdown at the restaurant. He'll come around, she thought, clinging to the belief that he cared for her as much as she cared for him. But days turned into weeks, and Emma began to see the truth she had been too blind or too stubborn to acknowledge. Lucas had used. She replayed every conversation they had ever had, searching for signs she might have missed. The compliments, the attention, the sweet promises, they all seemed genuine at the time. But now, in the cold light of hindsight, they felt hollow. His charm had been calculated, his affection a means to an end. And what was that end? Her money? Her connection? Or was it just the thrill of manipulating someone who was vulnerable? Emma hated herself for falling for it. She had traded a life of stability and love for an illusion, and in the process, she had destroyed everything. One night, in a moment of desperation, she decided to call Luca. Her hands trembled as she dialed his number, hoping, praying that he would answer. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, to her relief, he picked up. "Emma," he said, his voice flat. "What do you want?" The coldness in his tone hit her like a slap. This wasn't the Lucas she had laughed, shared secrets. This was someone else entirely. I needed to talk," Emma stammered. "About what happened?" "About us." "There is no U.S. Lucas replied bluntly. "Emma, we had fun, but it's over. Move on." Move on? The words echoed in her mind, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. "But you said," she began, her voice cracked. "I said what I needed to say," Lucas interrupted. "Look, I don't want to make this harder than it has to. You knew what this was." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had been naive, foolish, and desperate for something she didn't even fully understand. And now the man she had risked everything for was discarding her like she meant nothing. The call ended abruptly, leaving Emma staring at her phone, her heart pounding. She felt a mix of anger, sadness, and humiliation. How had she let it come to this? How had she allowed one person to dismantle her entire life? The days that followed were some of the darkest Emma had ever experienced. She barely ate and barely slept. She couldn't escape the crushing weight of her mistakes, the guilt of what she had done to Liam and their children. She tried to distract herself by cleaning the house, by organizing old photo albums, but every task only reminded her of the life she had lost. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of memory, Emma came across a stack of letters Liam had written to her early in their relationship. They were full of love, hope, and dreams for the future. She sat on the floor, clutching the letters to her chest, and sobbed. The man who had loved her so deeply, who had believed in her, was gone, and she had driven him away. Meanwhile, Liam's prediction about Lucas came true. Without Emma's financial support and connections, Lucas quickly moved on to his next target. Emma heard through mutual acquaintances that he had been seen with another woman, a wealthy older widow. It stung, but it also brought clarity. Lucas was never the solution to her problem. He was a symptom. For the first time in years, Emma forced herself to confront the truth about her actions. She had sought validation from Lucas because she felt unseen and unappreciated in her marriage. But instead of addressing those feelings with Liam, she had chosen the easy way out, a choice that had led to heartbreak for everyone involved. Emma decided to seek therapy. It wasn't an easy decision, but she knew she needed help to untangle the emotions and patterns that had brought her to this point. Her therapist encouraged her to explore the root of her dissatisfaction, to understand why she had sought comfort in Lucas instead of working to fix her marriage. The sessions were painful but necessary, forcing Emma to face the parts of herself she had been avoiding for years. Through therapy, Emma began to rebuild. Slowly, she started painting again, using art as a way to process her pain and find a sense of purpose. She reached out to her children, apologizing for her mistakes and promising to do better. While Liam remained distant, she respected his boundaries, knowing that she had no right to demand forgiveness. Lucas, on the other hand, became a ghost of her past. She deleted his number, blocked him on every platform, and vowed never to let someone like him into her life again. It was a small step, but it was a start. Emma's journey wasn't easy, and it wasn't linear. There were days when the guilt felt unbearable, when she questioned whether she deserved to move forward. But little by little, she learned to live with her mistakes, to accept the consequences of her actions without letting them define her. And while she knew she could never undo the damage she had caused, she also knew she could choose to grow from it. Emma wasn't the woman she had been when she met Luca, nor was she the woman she had been when she married Liam. She was someone trying to be better, not for anyone else, but for herself. Rebuilding and reflection. For Liam, The days after the divorce were a mixture of chaos and clarity. Chaos because he had to navigate life as a single parent, juggling work and taking care of his kids in a completely new environment. Clarity because, for the first time in years, he knew exactly what his priorities were. In the mornings, Liam would wake up before dawn, prepare breakfast, and pack lunches for his kids. He would drive them to school, then head to work, where he threw himself into his project. At night, he helped with homework, listened to their stories about their day, and tucked them into bed. It was exhausting, but it was also deeply fulfilling. Liam realized he had missed out on so many of these moments before. Now, he was determined not to miss another. But rebuilding wasn't just about routine. It was about healing. And for Liam, that was the hardest part. There were nights when the loneliness crept in, when he lay awake thinking about everything he had lost. He thought about Emma, not as the woman who betrayed him, but as the woman he had loved, the woman who had once been his best friend. He thought about the dreams they had shared, the plans they had made, and he wondered if there had been something he could have done to save their marriage. But Liam also knew he couldn't live in the past. He had 2 children who depended on him, and who needed him to be strong and present. So he took small steps toward moving forward. He reconnected with old friends, people he had lost touch with during the years he had been consumed by work and family obligation. He joined a local running club, not because he loved running, but because it gave him a sense of community. And slowly, he started to feel like himself again. For Emma, the journey was different. She remained in the house, surrounded by the memories of the life she had shattered. Therapy became her life, helping her understand the choices she had made and the consequences they had brought. Her therapist encouraged her to focus on herself, to rediscover the parts of her that had been lost in the chaos of her marriage and her affair. One day, Emma picked up a paintbrush for the first time in years. The canvas in front of her felt like a stranger, but as she began to paint, something shifted. The strokes were hesitant at first, but then they flowed, carrying with them a flood of emotions she had buried for too long. Painting became her refuge, a way to process her guilt, her grief, and her hope for a better future. Emma also reached out to her children, determined to rebuild her relationship with them. She called them every night, asking about their day, their friends, and their schoolwork. She visited them on weekends, taking them to the park, the movies, or just for ice cream. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the kids pushed her away, still hurt and confused by everything that had happened. But Emma didn't give up. She knew trust wasn't something you could demand, it was something you had to earn. For both Liam and Emma, the process of rebuilding was slow and uneven. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but there were also victories, small, quiet moments that reminded them of what they were working toward. For Liam, one of those moments came during a family dinner. His daughter, who had been quiet and withdrawn since the divorce, suddenly looked up and said, "Dad, I like our new home. It feels cozy." Liam's heart swelled. It was a simple statement, but it meant everything. It was a sign that, despite the pain and the upheaval, they were starting to find their footing as a family. For Emma, it was the day her son hugged her without hesitation. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of forgiveness, or at least the beginning of it. At that moment, Emma felt a glimmer of hope that maybe one day she could truly make amends. But perhaps the most important part of their journeys was the way they each began to redefine themselves. Liam, who had spent so much of his life trying to provide for others, started to focus on what he wanted for himself. He set new goals, not just for his career but for his personal life. He started writing, something he had always loved but had never made time for. It was cathartic, a way to process his emotions and rediscover his voice. Emma, on the other hand, began to embrace her independence. For the first time in years, she wasn't defined by her role as a wife or a mother. She was just Emma, a woman learning to stand on her own, create a life that was hers and hers alone. Their paths didn't intersect often. Liam and Emma communicated when necessary, but their conversations were brief and focused on the kid. There were no grand gestures of reconciliation, no dramatic apologies or declarations of forgiveness, but there was a quiet understanding between them, a recognition that, while their marriage had ended, their shared responsibility as parents would always connect them. And while neither of them said it out loud, they both knew they had grown stronger because of what they had endured. As the months turned into years, the scars of the past began to fade, though they never disappeared completely. Liam and Emma carried those scars with, not as reminders of failure, but as symbols of growth. They were proof that they had survived, that they had endured, and that they had emerged on the other side. In the end, their story wasn't about betrayal or heartbreak. It was about resilience, about the ways people can fall apart and rebuild, about the choices we make, the mistakes we learn from, and the strength it takes to keep moving forward. Because no matter how deep the wound, there is always a way to heal. It just takes time, effort, and the willingness to face the truth, the lasting consequences and moral of the story. Years passed, but the scars of what had happened between Liam and Emma remained. They were not the kind of scars that faded away. They were the ones that stayed as reminders of love lost, of lessons learned, and of the strength it takes to move forward. For Liam, the pain of betrayal never fully left. There were moments when he'd catch himself thinking about the life they once had, about the dreams they had built together. When he looked at his children, he saw pieces of Emma in their smiles, in their laughter, in the way they approached the world with a mix of curiosity and courage. It was a bittersweet reminder of what they had shared and what had been broken. But Liam had also learned to let go of the anger. Holding on to it only weighed him down, and he had come to realize that forgiveness wasn't about the other person, it was about setting himself free. While he hadn't told Emma that he forgave her, he had made peace with the past in his own way. Emma, too, carried the weight of her choices. The guilt lingered, not as an overwhelming force but as a quiet whisper in the background of her life. It reminded her of the person she never wanted to be again. Therapy had helped her see that her actions were rooted in deeper insecurity, fears she hadn't addressed until it was too late. She still painted, her canvases now filled with vibrant colors that reflected not just her pain but also her hope and resilience. Her relationship with her children had slowly mended over time. They had forgiven her in the way only children can, with open hearts and an unspoken understanding that love is stronger than mistake. Emma cherished every moment she spent with them, knowing that trust was a gift she had to earn every day. The bond between Liam and Emma had transformed. They were no longer husband and wife, no longer partners in the way they had once been, but they were still a family. They were still a family. They worked together to co-parent their children, attending school events, birthdays, and holidays without tension or bitterness. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary, and over time it became natural. There was no grand reconciliation, no fairy tale ending. Their story wasn't about rekindling a lost romance. It was about finding a new kind of strength in the aftermath of heartbreak. Liam and Emma learned that some relationships are meant to evolve, to change into something different, but equally important. For the children, the divorce had been a painful experience, but it had also taught them valuable lessons. They saw their parents rebuild their lives, saw them stumble and rise again, and in their own way they carried that resilience with them, knowing that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to keep going. The moral of Liam and Emma's story is one of accountability, growth, and the power of choice. Betrayal has consequences. It shatters trust and leaves wounds that take years to heal. But those wounds don't have to define a person. They can be a source of strength, a reminder of the resilience we all carry within us. For those watching, Liam's journey is a testament to the importance of standing up for yourself, of valuing your worth, even when it feels like the world has turned against you. Emma's story, on the other hand, is a cautionary tale but also a story of redemption. It shows that even when we make the worst mistakes, we have the ability to learn, to grow, and to become better versions of ourselves. And for their children, their story is a reminder that family isn't about perfection. It's about love, effort, and the willingness to move forward despite the challenge. So, what can we take away from that? Life isn't always fair. People make mistakes, some bigger than others. But what matters is how we choose to respond. Do we let the pain consume us, or do we find a way to rebuild? Do we blame others for our choices, or do we take responsibility and make amends? The truth is, everyone has the power to create a new chapter in their story. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick. But with time, effort, and a little bit of hope, it's possible to heal. It's possible to forgive not just others but also yourself. In the end, Liam and Emma's story is about resilience. It's about facing the darkest parts of life and finding the light on the other side. It's about remembering that even when everything seems broken, there's always a way to rebuild. And most importantly, it's about learning that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that make us stronger. As you reflect on their journey, ask yourself, what would you do if you were in Liam's shoes, or Emma's? Would you have the courage to confront the truth, to face your mistake, to rebuild your life piece by piece? Their story may be unique, but the lessons it offers are universal. Life is messy, people are flawed, but within that messiness lies the beauty of growth, of second chances, of new beginning. Because at the end of the day, what matters isn't how you feel, it's how you choose to